Hit subscribe to the DIY Writer to support your hardworking authors and also lessen your chances of ending up as a victim in their next book. Join me at the first annual Icarus Book Convention, May 8th and 9th. This conference has a great lineup of speakers, including little old me, talking about podcasts, vlogs, and other neat author stuff. Go to Icarus, IQARUS book, con, CON.com for more information. Hope to see you there. This is Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer Podcast. Today we have a hell of a treat. We're going to be talking to Deborah Driggs. If you don't know her, you can look her up on the internet. But we're going to be talking about her life, and she's actually writing a memoir that's going to be out in October of 2021, or maybe sooner, who knows. But this is a special podcast that we're going to be talking about some kind of heavy issues and just basically the underlying story is going to be how the hell to get through life and keep your chin up and keep on standing up every time some asshole or the world knocks you on your ass. So without any further ado, Deborah, how you doing today?
Hi everyone. Hi Jeff. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure.
Part of your quirky world. Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. You know, one of the reasons that I'm really interested in having you on here is I went through the story that you posted on Facebook and also your biography, and it is truly an inspirational story. And I'd like to kind of start off with, I guess wherever you want to start off with, but I prefer that we kind of start talking about your childhood and how that was, and kind of, maybe move forward through there, and you can just hit the brief parts or whatever. But I mean, this is about your memoirs and how a very strong woman emerged from a lot of tough situations.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel very privileged to be able to speak about that, and my hope and my purpose is always that something I say helps somebody out there, right? That's the reason to do anything. Biography, memoir, I'm just, another person on the bus trying to make it through life, right? And so, yes, as a child, I grew up in a very, very dysfunctional, chaotic life. And here's the deal. My mom was 18 when she got married. My dad was 21. So they had no tools. But when you're in it and you're growing up in this family that you don't understand it as a kid, and I was a really happy kid, and I would think to myself, why is everybody so upset and angry? And I would ask that all the time. Don't they get how wonderful life is? And I was a really good student. I did well in school. I was well liked by my teachers, and I had self-confidence, even though I was in this environment. And I always knew and felt different because I'd go to play with other kids or be with other kids, and their family looked different. The mom was making food in the kitchen and the house smelled good, and the dad was reading the paper and, hey, shucks, how's it going? And it was like the TV shows, like the Brady Bunch or, Dennis the Menace, the parents, I would always look at that and go, God, how come I didn't get those parents, and I had this beef with God for a long time because I felt gypped. Like, why didn't I get that family? Why didn't I get that family? And so I always kind of felt like there was something wrong with me and my family, and that there was always a little insecurity, and it got worse when my parents divorced and I was 14, and I remember just feeling like really abandoned and really alone, like that really just shut me down. And I was doing pretty well up until then, and then of course my first addiction was attention as a kid. It was like, with all that stuff going on, what did I become? I became the, hey, look over here, stop yelling, hey, I'll put my go-go boots on and do a dance. Okay, let's, and, anything to stop the stuff that was going on around me, especially, the yelling. There'd be a lot of yelling, and a lot of verbal abuse from my father. And my father, he was an alcoholic and would drink and say inappropriate things.
Hmm.
And, when you're in it, I just didn't understand, like what the heck, and then we'd go out in public. And this is where it gets kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? Because you have all this stuff going on behind closed doors.
Right.
And they go out in public and they'd be telling me, now behave, wear your best clothes, look a certain way, And so I had these completely like disconnected, you know, behind closed doors, we're totally dysfunctional, but when we go outside, we're perfect. And boy, did I learn how to do that. I
Okay.
learned how to have this completely dysfunctional life, but always appear to look like I had it going on and I had everything was together. And that causes suffering,
Yes.
because you're not living your authentic self and you're
Right.
hiding. And so it just became more and more and more suffering. And then, I just kept feeling more and more like a failure because everything I was trying to do, get good grades, be the perfect child, and, I had a skating career. I was a figure skater for many years. Get up at 4 a.m.,
Hmm.
skate, and go to school and get good grades, and then skate after school. And this went on for years. And nothing I did was going to stop the chaos, right? Nothing.
Right.
I tried so hard, and that's a big, big load to take on as a kid, because you think, well, if I do this, and it'd be like a moment. I don't know that my parents ever said, wow, we really love you, or wow, you're doing such a good job, I'd be just like, somebody love me, somebody please love me. And God didn't know I could love myself. Had to took a lot of years and a lot of mistakes to figure that one out. We'll get to that. But I just didn't know anything that was going on, or and so it was, really just having to go through all of that to and have it get worse to have it get better, have it get worse to have it get better. It could never just be like this because I didn't know how to do that. And I get tools along the way throughout my life. And I think what saved me was ice skating. That saved
Really?
my life. Yeah, that really saved my life because I had a place to go. I had coaches. I had 3 coaches, as I got better and better and
Hmm.
started really competing. I ended up, with 3 really good coaches, and they were very, very eloquent speaking people. And I learned lessons, not just how to figure skate, but I was being coached. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I was getting life lessons also and learning to show up on time. I showed up for my lessons. I did what I was told. I got discipline. I got love. I had respect from the peers that I was skating with.
Hmm.
And I fell down and my coach would yell and say, get back up. You're not doing anybody any good laying there on the ice, get back up. And those were lessons that I learned. And I remember my first competition, I blew it, completely blew it. My first jump out of the gate fell and I couldn't, my mind went blank and I started crying and I'm trying to finish my routine. And I came off the ice and I was like, and my coach grabbed me and took me in the locker room. She's like, stop crying, stop crying. That's not going to solve anything. Let's talk about what went wrong and what we're going to do to improve. Boom. You know, like
Hmm.
those are the things that really were shaping me. So when I look back at some of the hard times that I went through or some of the things that I was able to accomplish, that was where the foundation started, was with ice skating.
Isn't it amazing how people like that can step into your life and do things like that where you first think about it's like, oh my God, you jerk. And, you know, I can't believe that, you would say that to me at this time. And then all of a sudden it clicks. It's like, oh, you're helping me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing when that happens. And they're really just, like you said, get up, stop bawling,
Yeah.
Get back on the horse.
I came from I'm 57 and I'm very proud of that because I consider myself a late bloomer in life. I had to learn things very later on in life. We'll get to that. But
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a late bloomer but yeah, I was talked out of that victim mentality through my ice skating coaches because I could have come off the ice and been like, oh my God. Oh, and they could have been, I know, you poor thing. You fell. Oh.
Yep.
Instead, they were like, no. Stop it. Move on. Next, and so I don't understand the mentality of parents today because everybody gets a ribbon or a trophy or this, or nobody has to fight for anything.
Yeah.
It's so easy now. And they don't understand the grit and the hard work that we had to do in the 70s and 80s as an athlete training. And I've talked to a lot of athletes, so it's not just my opinion. I've talked to many athletes. I was married to an Olympic athlete. Mm-hmm. And the grit and the hard work, and nobody was patting you on the back all the time going, you're so great. It was more like, here's the structure, here's the discipline, here's what you got to do. And, if you did well, I was like, okay, that's great. Now let's make it even better, and so ice skating saved my life because I did not have any other, my parents did not have the tools. I thought about this a lot while I was writing my book, my memoir. I thought about it a lot because I thought, I couldn't think of a time where either of my parents sat me down and said, hey, Deb, I think that if you do this, or maybe if you stop doing this, or, let me share something with you about life. Like, I couldn't think of one example.
Wow.
Right? And so I was like, and my mind went totally blank. Like, I didn't have those parents, but oh my God, and then, my whole goal in life now is what's beautiful about it, what's good about it, and, where can I find the beauty in that? And there's so much beauty in that because I really had to figure shit out. It's like,
well, I think that appreciation for life starts when you start living, like you said, your authentic life. When you stop putting up the walls, stop putting on the airs and say, you know what, fuck it, this is me.
Yeah,
this is just me. Like me, hate me, don't care. And when you can do things for yourself that you love, for yourself or about yourself, and don't give a rip what anybody else thinks, all of a sudden that's a certain level of freedom that not a lot of people obtain. I mean, they really don't. To be able to release yourself from caring about other people's judgment, I think is an important part of life.
Yeah, it's not really, it takes so much courage, and it's one of the hardest things to do is to love your adversaries, love people that are judging you, love people that have an opinion of you. Listen, we're going to do this podcast, right?
Yep.
Let's say 500 people watch the podcast. You're going to have 500 opinions about it. Mm-hmm. And it's really not, it's like if I took all those opinions to heart, I would not be here, Right. And so just knowing to just stay on my purpose, stay on my path, and know that, I'm just going to try and help one person, and that's it. I'm not going to try and save the world,
Well, when you put your book out, one of the things, when you get it on Amazon or whatever, you're going to run into the 1-star review. And that's going to be a combination of different things. It's going to be the, oh my God, I hated it. This person has never seen an editor in her life, blah, 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 some snippy, whoever. Usually those are people that want to write a book, but couldn't get through it and couldn't do it. The other one will be like, this is the worst ham sandwich I've ever had. And they'll review the wrong product and give you a 1-star. It's just the weirdest shit in the world, but I can't wait. It's great. But that first one that you actually think they're talking about you and you're like, oh my God, it's crushing. Yeah. You just got to ignore it because those people exist.
They do.
You know, it's the person that gives you a 3-star review that gives you actual critique. That's like, oh, I kind of like them. Okay. And you read it, and then everybody else is just like, oh, 5-star. It was wonderful. Well, thank you. You know, you kind of blush. Oh my gosh. But on the other hand, that 1-star, it's like, you know, did you even read the damn book? Who knows?
Yeah. Well, it's very similar to social media now. People just hide behind the computer and type away and have all these opinions. But I guarantee if I see them in person, they're gonna be like, Deborah, how are you? It's like, weren't you the one causing havoc on my social media? You know, I mean, it's like, it's that.
The many faces of people.
Social media has really, really been interesting, you know, because it's not really my, you know, my cup of tea. And I tried to, excuse me, I tried to navigate through it, but it's not easy. It's like, you know, I've actually, so we'll get to that. I've actually kind of backed off from social media a little bit just because I felt this shift, and I was like, wow, I'm picking up my phone way too much. Like, we need to stop for a while. So
yeah, I went through a phase, and I'm kind of getting over it, to where I was like, okay, no politics, not going to talk about COVID. You know, just do some funny stuff, and, you know, don't comment on anybody else's, you know, if they're being a dumbass, don't just let them be a dumbass, you know, whatever.
Just keep it light.
I've kind of gotten over that, because I'm getting kind of tired of all these people saying, oh my God, you know, and It's like, what do you know? You work at McDonald's. Shut up.
Yeah.
You're not a scientist.
Hey, don't put down working at McDonald's. I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh, I worked at McDonald's, but you know, I'm just saying, when you're a fry tech, you don't have the you know, same knowledge as a virologist in Harvard. You know.
True.
But,
so anyway, speaking of school, so I barely graduated from high school. Barely, like literally begged my way out of high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. I got into surfing in high school, and I realized that nobody cared what I did. So I did. I thought, well, if nobody else cares what I do, then guess what? I'm going to work, make money, buy a car, and go surfing. And that's exactly what I did. I worked really hard. I worked at a Clark Drugs. And I'd get out of school my sophomore year, and I'd walk to work, get off work about 11 o'clock every night, go home, try to do homework. And if I felt like going to school the next day, I did. If I didn't, I went surfing if the waves were good. You know, it was like, that was my life. And I didn't have parents going, you need to go to school and get good grades, because my dad was busy working twilight shift, and my mom was living in Long Beach. I ended up living with my dad when they divorced. And nobody cared. Nobody asked me, how was school? What are you doing? So I became this young adult kind of running the show, right? I'm running the show. I'm running my life. And, you know, and by the way, my teachers, they knew I was smart. You know, I had great grades. I went to a private Catholic school up, you know, till 8th grade, and then ended up at a public high school. So I had really good grades, and my teachers knew I was smart, you know, and they just knew I wasn't applying myself.
Sure.
And so I'd go in and like negotiate with them. Like, I know I didn't show up a lot, but is there like a report I can write, or can I do something to, like, just give me a D so I pass, you know? Like, I would negotiate. I learned how to negotiate and manipulate, and like, I learned all that in high school. Like, you know, and I remember my senior year, there was a class you had to pass to graduate. It was like, if you didn't pass government, you weren't graduating. I never went to the class. And the funny thing is I was in student council. I think I was secretary in student council. And I turned 18 my senior year. So I'm writing my own notes. Hey, Dad can't come to school today. I love that. You know, it's like, Deb can't come to school. She's busy surfing. Hello.
Ditto. My favorite one was, I can't attend school today. I have potato famine.
Yeah.
And they have to accept it. You're 18. You sign yourself out.
That's it. And so I was like, did you see the wave report this morning? Okay. I'm at the beach. I'm on Manhattan Beach, left side of the pier with the pier rats, man. I'm surfing. So anyway, so my government teacher gave me some crazy, write a 2,000-page report to graduate type thing. And I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I barely graduated high school, had really bad grades when I graduated.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what college was. I didn't take an SAT. I didn't, nobody was saying, are you going to go to college? Nobody cared, like I said. So,
Right.
so I ended up moving back with my mother at the time. And there was a junior college in Mission Viejo, and they were having cheerleading tryouts. So I went and tried out to be on the squad, and I made it. But when they got my grade transcript, the head of the squad called me in, and her name was Betty Shear. I love her. And she said, Deborah, you have like a D average. You can't be on this song leading squad with this average. I'm sorry, we can't allow it. And I said, well, can I be on probation? And she's like, looks at me like, how do you know that? And I was like, well, can I be on probation? I said, what if I get really good grades my first semester? Then can I be off probation? And she was like, okay, Deb, you have to get like really good grades to stay on the squad. So I made it I got on the dean's list my first semester in college, because now I had somebody holding me accountable. Somebody cared what my grades were. And I really wanted to be on the squad, and I really wanted to be a part of this community. So now I had a purpose again. And that's kind of that was the new thing that kind of saved me when I started college. I had this new environment. I had somebody who cared about my grades, and voila, when I'm kind of smart. So yeah.
I have a stupid story for you that I think will be funny. It'll take me like a minute.
Okay.
So when I was my freshman year in college, I played on the football team. My roommate, I was on defense, he was on offense, and my roommate and I enjoyed college life. Okay. So all of a sudden, halfway through the first semester, the head coach calls us into his office together. And his name is Raleigh Greeno. He was just a funny little short guy, and very, I would liken him to like Vince Lombardi as far as coaching style. Sits down and he says, Jeff, Derek, just want to tell you, I'm very proud of you guys, and just want to tell you that, it's very nice to have you here. You guys, honestly, if I put you together, you are like the perfect football player, because you'd be on offense and defense, and you'd have a 3.0 grade average if I added both of your guys' GPA. It's like, oh no, that's what this is. And yeah, so you need to get off your ass and study. It's like, otherwise you're not gonna be playing football anymore, or doing this or doing that. And it's just like, oh, okay. But he had a very funny way of just kind of sliding that in there. If I add your guys' GPA together, you guys have a 3.0. So good job. Not, but it's just kind of fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to you.
Oh yes, my first addiction is attention. Okay, I need a lot of attention, a lot of focus. Focusing, right?
Okay, I'm focusing on you, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah. So
entice me.
So now we're up to college.
Yep.
And so I kind of turned things around in college. High school, I was big partying, party girl, going to all the parties, lots of drinking. I experimented, with lots of different drugs. The good news for me is that I did not like drugs. And that is really good news, because a lot of my friends do not have that story. I did like alcohol, though, very much, because alcohol did that thing where it just made me feel like a rock star. It made me feel like, put some alcohol in me, and all of a sudden, I knew everything. I was the best dancer. I was the best this, I was the best that, I felt that just feeling of calm with alcohol, and did that for lots of years on and off. But drugs was never a thing for me. Thank God. Because, I've lost a lot of friends over the years to drug addiction. So thank God for that. And, so
I've seen a lot of people go from one drug to another, end up on meth, and 2 years later you see them, and they
don't look the same.
They are not the same person. They are not. I mean, they're gone.
Yeah.
And then they're dead.
that drug eats you from the inside out. It's like battery acid, you know,
Yeah.
it's just, oh,
I mean,
my skin. And I'm so obsessed with my skin. So that alone would keep me away from, you know.
the skin and the teeth, and then they,
Yeah.
like I said, it rots them from the inside out, and then they just,
Yeah,
you know,
it's a slow death, really.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so college, you know, I had and I talk about all this stuff in the book, but I had an arrest when I was 18, and I was pulled over for drunk driving. And
Mhm.
the good news about that, at the time, it was devastating. You know, it was like, you know, can you imagine? I'm like the song leader, dancer, and I get handcuffed and thrown into jail. And the good news about it, it slowed me down. It didn't stop me, but
It slowed you down.
it slowed me down. It woke me up a little bit, and it made me realize, you know, whoa, I'm playing with fire here, because I was passed out drunk driving. And
Mm.
you know, the DA threw the book at me, and I lost my license for a year. And so I had to find rides to college. It was, you know, it was mortifying, because people were like, you got thrown in jail? I was like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
that just wasn't normal behavior, you know? And so that happened. And then, you know, but then it was like, here I go again, right? Here's the private, here's the public. But then I win, I'm the homecoming queen, and I'm the song leader. And then I tried out for the USFL, and I make the LA Express cheerleading squad. And so on the outside, everything looks really good. And on the inside, it's like constant suffering, because I now know that my drinking is a problem, but I'm not stopping.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the maturity level or the awareness to know how to stop. And I have parents who are both drinking. And even through the whole drunk driving thing, through all of that, they were like, I remember the DA telling my mother, you know, your daughter has a drinking problem. Her drinking level was like 0.26. And my mother went, my daughter's the homecoming queen. You know, just like that. Like,
Okay.
you know, like, remember, on the outside, we're this. And then, so if you don't have somebody in your life going, yeah, I know, we need to work on that, then I just stayed in denial for a lot of years. The suffering just continued. And so now it's just a pile. The pile's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you know, it's almost like you have your arms out. I'll give you a visual, and somebody puts on your arm a pillow, and that's trauma, childhood trauma, right? And then there's your mom yelling at you, and then there's nobody cares, and then there's abandonment, and this pile just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you're walking around carrying this pile, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And now you add DUI and drunk driving and this and this, and it's like my arms are like going to collapse, right? And at some point you're going to break. And
Yep.
and by the way, you just don't know when that's going to happen. And so I just continue to keep the persona that everything's okay until, you know, until it's not. But, you know, the pillows are just piling, basically. And so I make the LA Express squad, which was a huge thing. You know, 1,000 girls show up to the Hollywood Palladium. I'm 18 years old, short hair, braces. I'm not your typical professional cheerleading, you know, not what you would think in your head if you were looking for a professional cheerleader. I did not have that look. But the girl that I went with, we both had braces. We're both 18. We drove from Mission Viejo together to Hollywood. We made it through the whole thing. We both made the squad. And all of a sudden now I'm being put on radio shows and talk shows, and I'm cheering at the Coliseum, and you know, I'm meeting celebrities and the USFL, and you know, learning about football. I'm a cheerleader, but I know nothing about football. And you know, it's just like, it's just all a show, right? And from that, because I had the ice skating, dancing, cheerleading background, I went to Japan to dance with a group, and ended up staying for 6 months in Osaka. I loved it. Loved it. First time out of the country on my own. I'm 20 years old. I go to Japan, And while I'm in Japan, a company there hired me to do a commercial. And I got to do this funny girl routine in front of the camera. And it was for some product. I don't even remember what it was. I just remember they had me in a poodle skirt doing like 50s dance. And I loved it. I was like, I'm a funny person. And so I came back from Japan and I told everybody, I'm going to do commercials because I did this commercial. And I had one commercial that I did. So I took this class in LA. I drove back and forth twice a week to a class called Tepper Gallegos. And you do this commercial workshop. And at the end of the workshop, they bring in agents from all over LA. And if you're good, they'll, they offer to sign you, whatever. I had 2 agents that night that were like, oh, we want to sign you. And I chose Pacific Artist was my first commercial agent. And the first commercial they sent me on, I booked it. And I had that kind of luck. I had that kind of energy. I just like everything I was touching was working. And next thing I knew, I did a radio show, which got me AFTRA. Before, back then, you had to get your AFTRA to get SAG. Or, it was really hard to get your SAG card. That was like a big deal to get your Screen Actors Guild.
Yep.
And so I got an after job. And once you did an after job, a year later, you would be eligible to join SAG. Okay. So I was like, oh my God. So everything was rolling. Everything was happening. And my agent called me and said, they need you to, can you be at this audition immediately, like in the next hour? They had an actress drop out and it's for a big commercial. I can't tell you what it's for. They want to keep it secret, but can you show up? And I'm like, sure. So I show up to this audition and it was my look that got me hired because did you ever see a movie called Breathless with Richard Gere? It's an old movie from the 80s.
Not that I remember.
Okay, well, I can't think of the actress's name, but she's a French girl, really beautiful woman, and she was supposed to do the commercial and she dropped out. And if you Google the movie Breathless and you see the lead actress, you're going to see I looked very similar to her.
We'll do that real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I get the job. So my agent calls me, says, okay, you're going to show up to the Universal lot at this time, and you're going to be met by so-and-so. So the next day I show up for this commercial. Again, they're keeping it secret. They don't want anybody to know what it is or who's in it. So when I get there, they meet me at my car. Back then I had a car phone, and so I call my roommates. I'm like, I'm on the set. I'll call you later. Hang up. They take me to my trailer and they said, so here's the deal. We're going to do hair and makeup, blah, blah, blah. And we'll come back to get you to go meet Mr. Rourke. And I said, oh, who's Mr. Rourke? And they said, Mickey Rourke. Now you have to understand in the 80s, he was huge.
Oh, I remember Mickey Rourke quite well.
Of course. And this was when he was at the top of his game. So I go, I'm sorry, Mickey Rourke's in this commercial? And they were like, yeah. And I must have turned every shade. And then I just went completely pale white. And I was like, I'm doing a commercial with Mickey Rourke. And they're like, yes. And I was like, can you just give me a minute? I go run back to my car. I start my car. I call my roommates. I'm like, oh my fucking God, you're not going to believe this. You cannot believe this. Guess who I'm doing this commercial with? And they're like, what? I go, Mickey Rourke. They're like, what? I'm like, yeah, oh my God. I'm like, what am I going to say to him? They're like, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, I'm 23 years old. This is nuts.
The name of the actress was Valerie Kaprisky.
Yes, that's it. So I replaced her in this commercial, and the commercial was for Suntory whiskey for Japan.
Oh.
So do you understand? This is how my life,
yeah.
I go live in Japan, and the first 5 commercials I book are all Japanese commercials because I understood the culture. And when I'd go on auditions and I'd meet them, I'd be like, ah, hajimemashite, hi, and they loved me. And because I took the time to communicate with them, sure. and I knew their language. So
can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
Is Mickey Rourke as cool as he seems?
Completely.
Just
the nicest. He was married at the time to a woman named Deborah Fury.
Mm-hmm.
And she had just done a movie that I can't think of the name of it, but it was a pretty popular movie that just came out, and they were married. And so I go to hair and makeup. they take me to the set and it's like Rourke and Driggs. Like there's chairs with Rourke and Driggs. And I'm like, my name is on a director's chair. Oh my God. You know, and I mean, my God, this was like it for me. If nothing else happened in my career, this was it. You know, this was that moment that I was like, I arrived, I made it. And I sat down. He was like, hi, I'm Mickey. Nice to meet you. And I was like, hi, I'm Deborah. And I then looked straight ahead and he's sitting to the side and he's talking to me. And I'm like, uh-huh. Like I won't even look at him. I'm completely intimidated by my surroundings. And I finally look at him and I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm a huge fan and I'm literally really intimidated right now. And I even said to him, thank God I don't have any lines. Because it was just me standing in the rain with an umbrella. It was all images. It was all really beautiful black and white commercial. Yeah. And it was for Suntory whiskey, you know, it was like their big whiskey. And it was a huge spot. And I was just like, and he just laughed. He was so kind to me. He just said, you're fine. It's okay. He knew I was really young and inexperienced with celebrities. You know, he was the first celebrity I worked with, you know, and I had no idea, you know, and I was just a kid and, you know, and it was just beautiful experience. I think it was like 2-3 days of shooting and I was on a big, you know, the Universal lot. So it was really cool. Cut to, I ran into him 6 years ago. There's a store in Beverly Hills and I want to say it's called Otto. It's a shirt making, it's on Beverly Drive. It's a shirt making store and he gets his shirts made with it, you know, with your initials and whatever. And I had my son, because I was getting my son some dress shirts with his monogram. And we were in the store and Mickey was there. And I go, Mickey, I said, you're not going to remember me. I said, but I did a commercial with you in 1986 for Suntory whiskey. And he just looked at me, you know, and he looks very different now. And so do I, obviously. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, I remember that. And I'm like, yeah. I was just like, talk about, you know, like I've had that many times throughout my life where my life just comes full circle. It's like, here I am now in my, you know, 40s and I run into him or 50 and I run into him and I'm like, I don't know if you're going to remember. And, you know, but I did a commercial with you. And he's like, oh my God, that's so cool.
That's very cool. I've heard a story from a person who said he sat down and had drinks with him by accident, just was sitting there and, you know, and then realized who the hell he was talking to. And he was just like, I would have never known it was him, you know, because obviously he looked a little bit different than he looked.
What a brilliant actor. My God, he's such a good actor.
Not only that, I just about everything that he does, I've loved.
Yeah.
So he is
9.5 weeks. I mean, my God, just the part he had in The Big Chill, he stole the scene. Not The Big Chill, Body Heat.
Body Heat, yeah.
Where he steals the scene with William Hurt. You know, it's like he's just so good. He's got such a presence.
Oh, don't forget about Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
Okay.
That one's hilarious. It's just it's so dumb. It's just, I mean, you know, their acting was great, but it was just funny. You know.
So anyway, so that was my first big, like, oh my God. And you know, I thought, okay, I belong. You know, it's hard, you know, when you're in the entertainment world to feel like you belong. And sometimes even being on the set, and even if you're the person that's the main role player there, with everything that's going on, and a lot of people don't get this, like, even though I'd be featured in a lot of commercials, it's kind of like you're pushed to the side until they're ready for you, and you've got all this stuff going on, and it's really hard to feel a part of, you know, and it's, you know, so the one advice, you know, some of the good advice I got early on was, you know, just be nice. Just always be nice and be aware that it's a privilege to be on the set, you know. And somebody told me that early on, and I always felt that way. Like I always felt like I said hello to everybody, from the craft service to made friends with the makeup, you know, because everyone's working hard to create something. And And I really truly believe that that's why I got called back a lot for different projects with the same casting people, because they knew I had that reputation of just being really nice and vivacious and fun, and I'd stay late if I had to. And, I
Sure.
didn't have my ego wasn't getting out of control. I was
Well,
just,
nobody really wants to work with a pain in the ass.
no, and that's, believe me, and there's lists of people that have been wonderful actors, but have lost their career due to being difficult.
Right.
And so, yeah, so it's really, it's just always a privilege for me to be on a set and learn and watch and grow. And yeah, I mean, like I said, if that was the last thing I did in the business with Mickey, that would have been it. I would have felt like, wow, that's all I had to do in my career. It was like, he's one of the best, and I got the chance to work with him.
Very
And
cool.
yeah, so, and then, I branched, I started thinking, I think I want to go out for acting roles. And I auditioned for Charles in Charge, was a really popular show.
Scott Baio.
Scotty Baio.
Yep.
And the casting director, again, I believe was on the Universal lot. And I believe his name was Marvin, and gave me the best advice I ever got. I went in for a role, and I walked in, and I, happy, I was really good at walking in and, hi, I'm Deborah, and blah, blah, blah. And then he had me read the sides, and I didn't even get through the first page. He's like, stop. He goes, Deb, come here, sit down. And he goes, when you walk through the door, I would have hired you on the spot. You had the look, you have everything that I'm looking for this girl. And I was really excited about meeting you. He goes, but girl, you can't act. He goes, so if I were you, he goes, my advice to you is go and take some acting lessons and get some chops, like get some acting, because he goes, you're very green and you really don't know what you're doing. And thank God he did that, because then I went and researched. I asked everybody. I asked my agents, my manager at the time. I asked people that I respected in the business that I knew, where do I go to get some really good acting now? And there were a few suggestions, but this one studio kept coming up, and it was the Baron Brown studio. And I called them and I said, they had a 6-week where you go, and it was a 2-year program, but they had a 6-week. And I think it was really for them to get to know and see if you then move on to do the 2 years. Sure. So I did the 6 weeks, and I ended up staying for 2 years. And their rules were just, don't audition while you're doing this. This is serious, take it seriously and really commit to the process. And it was a 2-year Meisner technique. And I took it seriously, and I showed up, did the work, and I had the opportunity to study first year with Joanne Barron. She no longer teaches that. And I think we were the last class. But it was a great group of people. We had Katie Vernon, Julianne Phillips, my ex-husband, Mitch Gaylord, the Boyd brothers, Brian and Boyd. They were twins, and they were acting at the time. And, just a lot of people that were working, Lisa Renna, okay. There were a lot of people in my 2-year program that ended up going on to, Michael Vartan was in my class. Yeah, so it was a really, serious, people were there to really learn how to act.
Sure. There's a couple things that I know from talking to other people, that, that particular business is very hard, and it takes a ton of work to get good at it. Yeah. I mean, I've interviewed a couple of actors now that have written books. And when they talk about, what they had to do to become, somewhat theatrical and be able to learn how to act or get their chops, that it wasn't something that they're naturally gifted at. It was something that they literally had to take years to work on in order to land a spot, not a lead, but some sort of a side role, or a third position. Yeah. Or even just to show up on the set. I mean, it took some skill and some, and some gumption to get there. And it's not easy at all. And there are a billion people that want to do that, but there's only so many people actually put the work in to actually get a chance to be in that spot.
Yeah. And 80%, I'll tell you this for anybody that's thinking about becoming an actor, 80% of it, really, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, this is not a fact. 80% of it is just staying in line. You know, keep your spot in line. Don't give up, because I know people that it took years before they hit anything. So, you know, just stick with it, because it's really a tough business. You really, you know, there's so many elements to it. And yes, it is very, you know, even with the training, like I could still, I've thought about it, like going back and redoing those 2 years again, because the training was so brilliant. And by the way, talk about the first time in my life when I went through that training. I remember the first year, Joanne, bless her heart, sat down next to me and she said, there's something with you. I don't know what it's, something with men. You're very disconnected from your body at times. Like, I don't know, like and she'd like contemplate it. And she'd be like, yeah, there's just something, there's like a disconnection. Yeah. You know, and it was like, she saw right through me. And it was the first time, you know, that
She
somebody
peered through your walls.
totally saw me. And I was like, oh, she sees me. She knows I'm not perfect. She sees through this facade. She's seen my private life for the first time. I'm 25 years old and somebody sees me. And I was blown away because I got chills. I was like, I looked at her and I was like, it scared me really, because I was like, I don't want her to know that there's something wrong with me. You know, I don't want her to know that I don't have it all together. I have it all together, you know. And I, you know, again, still was not ready to let that guard down, you know.
Yeah, but you know, how many people have fallen into the trap of thinking that they had to be perfect? You know, especially in Hollywood, you know, and then all of a sudden you see a picture of them smoking a cigarette or getting a little too drunk or doing something that they have to deal with all the pressure of trying to be perfect. Well, I mean, you're trying to be perfect and you're ruining yourself because you have this persona and then you have the real you, and they just, you know, there's that constant conflict. You know, when I see that stuff in the magazines, like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe who got drunk. Back the fuck off. You know, you have no idea, you know, the stupid shit that they have to go through, or, you know, the amount of people that just want to talk to them because they're famous, you know,
it's really, it's hard when you are, and then, you know, and you have to live not only your private life, your public life, everything gets blown out of proportion. And, you know, it's serious business too, you know. We'll get that whole thing too, but, you know, yeah, so she saw right through me, and all of a sudden I tried to pull up another shield and it wouldn't come up. And I was just like, I struggled through that first year, because I was like, every time I went to be on stage, I felt her looking right through me. And I was like, oh my God, you know. And it, you know, again, looking back, what a gift. Like, it was the first time, like, now a little awareness, not a lot, but a little. And so yeah, I made it through there. I thank God for that acting, because my auditions completely changed when I did start auditioning again. I had a completely different confidence, that I understood a little bit more, not a lot more, but a little bit more. And I was booking more things, like you said, you know, a line here, a line there, but in good stuff.
So you're going through this, but are you still drinking at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still drinking. And so, have we even talked about Playboy yet?
We have been going for about 49 minutes and we haven't even touched on Playboy yet.
Oh my God. So yeah, so So, I was with so here's how Playboy came about, because, I never, for most girls, Playboy was a lifelong dream. It was the #1 magazine in the world. I didn't know much about it until I got involved. I didn't know much about Playboy, really. It wasn't around my energy. And so my modeling agent called me. I was with Mary Webb Davis, and my agent was Vivian, and she called me and she said, Playboy's coming out with a book. It's called the Lingerie Book. And we submitted you for the cover. And I went, is there nudity involved? Because everybody associates nudity with Playboy. I said, is there nudity involved? And she said, no, it's just a cover, and they like your look and they want to see you. So I go for the audition at the famous Playboy building on Sunset. Back then they were on Sunset, and it was a famous building. And I went in, signed in, and they called me back, gave me a robe, and said, go change, and they're going to do a Polaroid. And I said, change into what? And they said, no, you just take off everything and put the robe on, and then they'll do a Polaroid. I said, oh, no. I'm not here for that. I'm here for the Lingerie Book cover. She said, yeah, well, everything we do here has got nudity, and we need to see your body. I was like, huh. So,
bait and switch.
Well, now I'm like, am I being like, what's going on? So I left my undergarments on, put the robe on. The photographer brings me in to do the Polaroid in the studio, and I take off the robe and I have my undergarments on, and he's like, we need to see your whole body. And I'm like, I'm not here to do Playboy. I'm here to do the cover. He's like, yeah, but we need to see everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm here for the right thing. Well, here's the deal. Back then in the 80s, and it's not a thing now, but back then they were looking for scars, tattoos. It's a much different world we live in now. Back then, that's what they were looking for. And I said, I don't have scars or tattoos or anything like that. So I leave. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get that, because I was very difficult. First time I'd ever been difficult, but I was like, it's total miscommunication.
Well, and back then it was, that type of stuff there was a stigma to it.
Yeah. So so now I get home and there's a message on my machine, and I listened to the message, and it was Marilyn Grabowski, and she talks like this. Like, Deborah, this is Marilyn Grabowski. I'm the chief editor of Playboy. And I'm like, what the heck? What is going on? Did I cause a problem? And she's like, we want to shoot you for a centerfold. And I'm like, she has got the wrong girl. Like, what? Like, that is so not me, right? I never saw myself that way. And so I called my agent. I'm like, you're not going to believe this message. She goes, I know, they just called me. Deb, they want you to be a centerfold. Forget the cover. They want you to be on a lot of covers, but they want to shoot you for the centerfold. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to pose nude. She's like, Deborah, it is the #1 magazine in the world. And lots of celebrities are doing Playboy, and they were at that time. It was every issue, some celebrity. And she's like, they're very, very interested, and they want to shoot you right away. And so I called a few people to see what their thoughts were. And every single person I called was like, you got to do it. It's so sexy. You got to do it. And I'm like, I'm not sexy. Like, this is weird. Like, I just didn't look at myself that way. I was a funny girl. That's how I saw myself, as a funny girl. And I didn't see myself as a sexy, but they loved it, because back then they really did want the girl next door.
Sure.
So that's how I became a centerfold. I did the test, HEF approved it, and I became March 1990 and was on the cover of April 1990. And that changed everything. Like, I thought I had success. That just changed everything. All of a sudden I had Muscle and Fitness wanted me on the cover. Everybody wanted to interview me. I got invited to go up and do the weather report in a helicopter for K-Rock. It was like all the radio DJs wanted me on their show.
Sure.
And then I got the call from Oprah, and Oprah, because of the timing of my issue coming out, it was, I don't know if you remember this, but Playboy always came out a month ahead of time.
Yes.
So if you were the March centerfold, it came out in February. So I got the call that Oprah wanted me on her Valentine's Day special, and that was it. I flew to Chicago and I did the Oprah show, and I was I really was so young and scared, and like I had nothing really to offer at that time in my life. I didn't know what I was doing, and Oprah was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember being so nervous, and I just remember the spotlights when you're on stage and it's live and everybody's laughing and applauding, and I'm like, where am I? This is not happening, like I just did not. That was like, it's one thing to play a part or do a commercial and act in front of the camera, but to be yourself on camera is a totally different vibe. So that was like a huge experience. And I just, from there, I was like, I need to up my game now. And I started reading for movies and reading for pilots. And where things started going bad is I started drinking more, started partying more.
Mm-hmm.
And Pam Anderson was February of my year. And we met in Chicago. We were shooting a catalog together, and she needed a place to live. She moved from Canada to LA. She moved in with me, and we started hitting the Rainbow Room and partying at night. And, we were like the it girls,
Mm-hmm.
at that time. And we were hanging out at Bar One, Roxbury Club. Alzado had a club. I mean, we were just every club, walking right in. And my drinking spiraled. And I auditioned for a huge casting director. And I don't know if she'll ever remember this story, but I auditioned for a movie called The Rapture, and it starred Mimi Rogers. And I went in and read for Deborah Aquila, who's huge now. If you Google her, she's one of the
Yep.
biggest casting directors in LA. I went in and read for her, and she hired me on the spot to be in this movie. And I did not show up to the read through.
Oh.
And to this day, that is like, like, how could you do that? Like, totally sabotaged, because I was
Yep.
down. It was like I was on the downward spiral and didn't know what to do, and got scared. And all of a sudden, the fear, that was the first time in my life that the fear became so powerful. And all of a sudden, all that stuff that I'd been carrying around started to fall. And me not showing up to that read through, I remember my manager calling me at the time and just laying into me like, what is wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, this woman's giving you a chance to be in this movie. And I just didn't show up. And, and bless her heart, she was casting another movie. I think I wrote her a letter apologizing, and just, I was mortified, really,
Mm-hmm.
at my behavior. And I apologized, and my manager apologized, and she brought me in again.
Wow.
And she gave me an opportunity to read for something else. I didn't get the part, but she brought me in again because I think she wanted to see my face. I think she wanted to just be like, I gave you a chance, girl, and you blew it. And I did. I blew it. And I blew that opportunity. And I don't know that I really learned from it until later on. That was just the start of the fall. And so I kept booking, I continued to book things and work and all of that. And then, I got married in 92. And, when I got married, I started a family right away. And I tried to continue to audition. And I was very lucky that, I worked as a mom.
Mm-hmm.
I booked general. I worked on a couple of soaps, did small day roles on some soaps, and in 1998 I did a show called Nightstand, and then after that I was like, you know what, it's just taking too much time away from being a mom.
Sure.
And so it's like I made the choice to be a full-time mom, and I would go on auditions that would be like, if it was like a day or two of work, I would do it, but I couldn't do anything that was taking me away from the role of being a mom.
Sure.
So, and yeah, during, I after I had my third child in 1997, that was kind of my first bottom, because I got really sick during that pregnancy, and I was trying to hold it together. My go-to is hold it together, everything's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I got very sick, and it was really tough after the birth of my third, and I went into postpartum depression, like, bad. Like, I did not want to get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. I was scared to leave the house, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just didn't know. I didn't even know that such a thing existed.
Yeah.
And by the way, I already had underlying trauma and depression. And now you've got postpartum. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just walking around with more and more pillows. And bless his heart, my husband at the time had no idea what was going on with me. He had no idea that he married somebody with all these pillows and that was suffering. He didn't know, and he's taking it personally, like he's doing something wrong. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know. I didn't know. And I'm giving him crumbs, like, hey, Mitch, put your hand out. Okay, here's a crumb. Okay, here's what you get today. Here,
Yeah.
this is it. Okay, you got it? Got it? Okay. Savor that, because that's all you're getting, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what my marriage was. It was like every once in a while I give him a crumb. And that's not a relationship. And and it's so it's hard, because I really love this person, and really, I had been engaged several times before I actually got married. Engagement for me was like dating. It was like, okay, want to get engaged? Sure. All right, and then it didn't work out, and then I was disappointed. I had to give the ring back. I'm like, wait, I don't get to keep the ring? What? Like, why do you want the ring back? We were engaged. Like, don't I get to keep it as a souvenir? So, this is how crazy it was. And then, I finally get married and had no tools, didn't know how to give in a relationship. I was going to the relationship to get, not to give. And, now I know, to be in a relationship, you're there to give, it's all about
Mm-hmm.
giving. And who knew, I got married, no tools, lots of pillows, lots of suffering, lots of pillows, lots of suffering. But hey, we're going to look good, because I know how to do that.
Right.
Really well. I know how to make us look good.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess the question that I have is, okay, so then you kind of fast forward and you went through a divorce.
Yes.
And
Painful divorce.
Yeah.
Painful divorce, because, here's the thing. People don't divorce for a lack of love. Not usually.
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10, when you ask people to get divorced, did you not love him anymore? And they'll go, no, I loved him. It just wasn't working out, or this wasn't happening, or
Right.
whatever. Even in abusive, people will still say, no, I really love that person. I think when people make that decision to get married, there is love, so it wasn't for a lack of love that we got divorced, because I loved him. It was a lack of other stuff. It was all the, I was doing the things you should never do to men. I was controlling, criticizing, taking, giving him crumbs, and nothing. And once you, and by the way, and I would threaten the relationship all the time. Well, if it doesn't go my way, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute you threaten anything, it's over. It just is, because it's always in the back of that person's head. God, if I don't do this, she's going to leave. And who wants to live like that? How horrible. What a horrible thing to do to somebody. But I didn't know. Those were my tools. That's all I knew. It took years and years after my divorce. I had to do so much peeling back the onion, because, here's what's great about my divorce. Here's the good news. Here's the beautiful thing. It forced me to grow up. It forced me to look at my part It forced me to peel back the onion. It forced me to go, Deb, you're an asshole. Like, why are you an asshole? What is going on with you? It's not about them, and it's like, it's like the drinking thing. It's like, well, if you knew what I had to go through, you know what this divorce did to me, and it's like, no, that didn't cause my drinking. Drinking was just me trying to stuff it down.
Right.
It doesn't work. And so the good news, the silver lining is that my divorce brought me to my knees, really brought me to my knees. And I had always had somebody codependent somehow. Like I said, I was engaged several times before I actually got married. So I always had somebody or something. And all of a sudden now I'm divorced with 3 kids and I'm alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought me to my knees. And I did not have the tools and I did not know. And it took me going in and out. I went to rehab. I just thought I was really depressed. Who knew? It's not the drinking. I'm depressed,
Yep.
And I would come up with I was always in denial. Like it was always something else. And until I finally realized, I think it might be the alcohol. It's part of the problem here. You know what I mean? And once you take the alcohol away, oh boy, then the fun begins. Because that's just the start. You take the drink, and then all of a sudden, here comes the list of things. It's, because you substitute, and all of a sudden now it's like all those pillows that I'd been carrying around for 40 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now going to have to deal with each one of them one by one. There's no escaping it.
Right.
To have a really peaceful life, there's no escaping dealing with each of those pillows. So let the fun begin. Here we go. Let the fun begin. Here we go. Game on. Yep. Okay, bring it on. And, and yes, I wanted to die. Yes, I felt suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
And I can joke about it because I have to now, but at the time that was serious business, wasn't the first time in my life that I wanted to die. I wanted to die at age 14, when I had to quit ice skating and my life turned upside down and no parents around, and I wanted to die when I got a DUI and ended up in jail. And I wanted to die when I didn't show up for that job,
Mm-hmm.
And there were just many times, but this was, okay, Deb, you can face it all or you can just keep running. What do you want to do? And I have really good running shoes, man. I know how to put them on, lace them up, and run to the next event.
Not only that, but you can put up walls.
Oh, big time.
And make everything look perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it took me a lot of years and a lot of in and out of sobriety, I didn't get it the first time around. I didn't get it the second time around. I am a late bloomer, like I said. Slow sobriety for me. And then I realized, it's like one day I woke up and I drew the line in the sand. And it was like, here's what I'm going to release out of my life. And here's what I'm going to give to my life. And, by the grace of God, I'm sober. And I wake up every day and there's not one day I wake up and go, God, I wish I would have partied last night and got really drunk and not remembered what I did. I wish that would have happened. Woo! Now I wake up every day now and I'm like, thank you, God, for my life. And that I woke up sober and I remember everything I did. How beautiful is that? It's like, and I don't owe anybody apology today, and then sometimes, life goes sideways, you don't get sober, everything gets perfect. Okay. Life will go sideways for me in sobriety. And then I'm like, well, I owe that person an apology because I kind of acted out, and I realize it now and can clean it up a lot quicker than waiting 10 years. And, I have hurt a lot of people. I've caused a lot of wreckage, and 40 plus years of drinking, and 40 plus years of carrying pillows, you can cause a lot of wreckage. And not doing it on purpose. I didn't do it to purposely hurt anybody. But, when you're carrying pillows and you can't see, because you got pillows in front of you, right?
Right.
Carrying those pillows and you're like trying to see what's going on in life. And then you're drinking on top of it. It's bad combo, and that's really, so if anybody goes, well, what's her book about, by the way? That's basically what, I think if I share my story and I share my experience of what my life was like, and the fact that I'm 57 and I'm just starting to get it. Like, I'm just starting to get it at 57. Like, it's never too late. Never too late.
See,
And
and I think that's
I've had a lot of successes in my life, a lot of successes, but I've had just as many failures. And the failures are what kind of builds upon, you can't have success without failure. It's just not possible,
and I think that's a great message, especially like your analogy of the pillows.
Yeah.
How they stack up and how you have to, basically take them one by one and deal with them. Otherwise, you can't find yourself.
Yeah.
I really like that. So I mean, that's something I'm looking forward to when your book comes out to, kind of read on how you attack that. The interesting thing that I found, that you were mentioning is that how you had to come back from all of that and now get a job, and you're in the real estate industry, and get people to actually take you, not take you for granted, and actually, give you some, what's the word I'm looking for? Credibility or something in this new field that you're in. And then you have to get out of the real estate industry because it crashed in 2008. And then you come back into the insurance industry, and become a top seller. So, I mean, your life is, all these ebbs and flows, ups and downs, hills and valleys, type thing. And
well, I'm definitely a survivor, I'm a survivor,
absolutely
big time survivor. And, I'm also a hustler, man. I got that as a young kid. I started working really young. My first job really was, I think I was in 5th grade, and I grew up in Torrance on Artesia and Yukon, and it was a very Asian neighborhood. And a lot of these little kids that came and moved from Korea or China or Japan, they did not speak English. And the parents, because they saw me in my Catholic uniform walking to school every day, would stop me and say, can I hire you to tutor my kids? And wouldn't you know, little entrepreneur that I am, I went to the teacher, the 1st grade teacher at my school, and I said, could I borrow some workbooks? And found a way to copy them. And I literally would copy them by writing, not copy like printer copying, but like I would like copy things out of them and turn them back in. And I started a little business in 5th grade. I was tutoring like 5 or 6 kids in my neighborhood, making cash, and like, what? Like, I had cash for the first time in my life. And that was like my first job. So I was a hustler. I was a hustler, networker. And, I bought my car when I was 16, and I found out the insurance was $1,000 for the whole year. For my car. It was like $1,000. And I was like, $1,000. That was, back then that was like $1 million.
right.
And I was like, $1,000. So, what I found in the paper? There was a guy, and he had a business. If you stuffed envelopes, he gave you 10 cents an envelope to stuff these envelopes, 10 cents or 50 cents an envelope, or I don't remember what it was. It was crazy.
Probably 10 cents.
I stuffed 10,000 envelopes. I sat morning, noon, and night, and I got my friends to help me, because I said, if you help me, remember, I'm going to give you a ride. I have a car now. I'll pick you up and give you a ride to school. So I convinced my friends to come over, and we stuffed these envelopes, and I'd turn them in, and he'd give me a check. And I kept doing it until I got $1,000 to pay for the insurance, the annual premium for the insurance, whatever it was. That's the kind of mentality I had. It was like, I need $1,000. How are we going to get that? And it was like, they just finding a way, make that happen. Nobody was giving me $1,000 to get insurance. Nobody cared,
right.
if I had a car or insurance. And, I went on my 16th birthday and got my driver's license. I made my dad take me. I was like, on my birthday, we're going. I'm getting my license. Like, I had to make shit happen. And it wasn't, then or back, it was today, like now. Like, when's a good time? Now.
Right.
We're doing it now. And that was just always my mentality. So yeah, so when I started in real estate, you know, it was the same thing. I had to hustle. I had 3 kids. I didn't get a big settlement from my divorce. I wasn't one of those women that lived off some great alimony plan. I was like, I had to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so got my real estate license, and I was smart enough to know that I wasn't smart enough to sell real estate. I knew nothing about real estate, but I studied really hard and I got my license. First try out of the gate, I passed my test because all I did was study, because I was like, I was gonna pass this test. And I felt really good about myself, because it was like, I never considered myself smart, because I barely graduated high school. So I was so proud of myself that I passed the test, and the test was not easy. I took it in Utah because I was raising my kids in Park City. And so I was working in a second home market. So this is why it crashed in 2008 for us, because it was second home, multi-million-dollar market.
Mm-hmm.
And I met with the guy and I said, here's the deal. I don't know anything about real estate, but I would like to be your assistant. He was the #1 realtor in Park City.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I know. I want to team up with that guy.
Right.
That's what I knew. And I was like, I could be your assistant, but here's the deal. I don't have any office skills. I've never sold real estate. I've never worked in an office. And I really don't know what I'm doing, but I'm a quick learner. And if you show me what to do, I'll do it, and I'll do it even better. Like, I was just like, I could sell myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, how are you with people? And I'm like, oh my God, that's easy. because you're my girl, because I hate dealing with he had 22 listings at the time. And he just did not like making those calls every day to the client. That was not his forte.
Sure.
Expert negotiator, expert marketer, expert at doing deals, but just not a people person. And I go, I'm your girl. Oh my God, we're going to make the best team. And so Rich Fine, his name was Rich Fine. And so he hired me. I spent a whole weekend in his office. He taught me everything. He sat right behind me. We shared an office, and I sat in front of him. He taught me everything about the computer, how to scan. I learned how to scan. I learned how to attach documents. I didn't know how to work a computer. All I knew how to do was send an email. I didn't know anything. So, I mean, I know nothing about being in an office, right? So I'm showing up looking like this, happy-go-lucky. And he gives me the list of his client list, and he goes, call everybody and introduce yourself. So I did. I ended up talking on the phone for an hour with each person. They fell in love with me. They're like, oh my God, Rich is so lucky. Oh my God, come meet me in person. So then I go and meet all these people in person.
Mm-hmm.
Then I start taking over, like showing their house and sitting open house and now I'm doing all that. And that's where we synchronized so well together. And I did for about 2 years up until the middle of 2008. It was about September 2008 when everything crashed.
Sure.
But I had a great run with him for 2 years, and we had a great deal. I made really good money with him. For me at the time, it was great money. And the other thing I was doing at the time was Park City has their own local Park City TV.
Sure.
So every morning I'd get up at 5 a.m. and go and do a 2-hour unscripted. It was called the Mountain Morning Show. And I would host that show for 2 hours unscripted from 6 to 8. And then my office, my real estate office was right across the street, literally. And I'd go to work and I'd host the show. And so everybody knew me from the show. So people would call me in my office and go, oh my God, I saw you on the show, blah, blah, blah. Can you come look at this house? And I'd be like, sure. So it was just like, it was all working.
Mm-hmm.
And some crazy things, we had crazy clients and stuff, but Rich would always say, could you call them back? Because he just didn't want to deal with that. People. He wanted to do the deals. Yeah. So we worked really well. To this day, we stay in touch. As a matter of fact, it was really funny. When I stopped working for him, I had everything so organized. One quality I have is I'm extremely organized. Like if you ask me where something is, I'm like, it's the left drawer to the right under the third piece of paper. Like I know exactly where everything is. Okay, I'm very organized. And I had everything in his office organized. I knew where everything was. And it was funny because a year after I stopped working for him, he'd shoot me a text. Hey, can you remind me where that code is or where the thing is? And so I was like, I was still working for him, even though I wasn't, like he was like,
Yep.
I can't believe I'm asking you this, but that's how organized it was, and just what a beautiful time that was working with him. And then 2008, everything came to a halt, really came to a halt. And I lost everything. I had no money. I couldn't pay rent. And the temple, I belonged to the temple, and a few people in the temple bought groceries for my family a couple times. And it got to the point where I asked my ex to take the kids. And I just knew that I just felt it in my body that everything was coming to a close. This chapter was coming to a close, and I needed to figure out my life. And there was no money, and the child support I was getting was just not enough to continue the life that we were living. So my kids went to go live with Mitch, and I went to go live with my mom. And talk about humbling. And at this time I was sober. I was very humbled. Went to go live in Ocala, Florida, a little town in Florida, in a 55 and over community. And I'm thinking, how did I end up here?
Yep.
And boy, oh boy, I just, for the first couple of weeks living with my mom, I couldn't get out of bed, I just couldn't get out of bed. I didn't have the energy. I was embarrassed. Like, how did my life get to this point where I have no money? My kids are living with the ex. And, everything was like it was just doom. And then, my mom had a dog. And one day my mom says to me, can you walk Heidi for me? I'm not feeling great. And wouldn't you know, that dog saved my life. I literally got up, took the dog for a walk, and I started meeting people in my mom's neighborhood. And she lives in a 55 and over community. And people were asking me, how are you? Well, I always fake it, right? I'm great, how are you? And I want to die, but that's a whole other issue. And so they were asking me, like, how are you? You're here with your mom. How awesome is that? Your mom must be so happy to have you here. And all of a sudden things started to shift. And I started turning it around little by little.
Okay.
These little godsends of people going, isn't that wonderful? Oh my God, your mom must be so happy to have you here. And then all of a sudden I knew all their names, all their dogs' names. All of a sudden it became a family. Like every day I'd be like, Mom, I'm going to go walk the dog. And I'd be like, I've got to go meet my friends at the dog park.
That's awesome.
This is my life. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a step.
Then I'd come back and I'd be like, okay, what am I going to do today? And I'd be trying to look for a job and, and trying to make things happen. And, and the rest is in my book. You'll see how it all ends up. It ends up.
See how it ends up in your book.
Yeah, it all ends up pretty well. But yeah, lots of great events, lots of great stories. And, everything that I thought was the worst thing that happened to me ended up being a beautiful lesson.
That's great. I'm very happy that you're writing your memoirs. And I'm glad you're so upfront about sharing your experiences. I know some of them are traumatic, and I know some of them, still I could tell, during the interview that, very, tugging on your heartstrings, very emotional. But the amount of courage it takes to share that type of stuff in order to help other people deal with their own shit baggage is courageous. And I just want to say thank you. It's very important that people realize who they are and then share that with the world, because that's how the world gets better.
Yeah.
Is by knowing that, I'm not alone. It's happened to somebody else. And it's those types of things that, when you share your true self, like you said, can help a lot of people that you would never imagine that would be touched by that type of a story, or even know that they have problems, because they're very good at putting up the walls and then totally crumbling down and being a completely different person at home, just like you said. I mean, those types of things happen on a daily basis to people because life sucks. And knowing how to deal with it, knowing that other people go through that same thing, is important. And I'm so happy you're sharing this. It's really a great service to a lot of people that you're doing this. So I so much appreciate your time today. I know we ran a little long, and I know that that you need to get running. So I do want to say, Deborah, you're a charming lady. I loved having you on here, and I hope at some point in time after you release your book that we do this again, because I've really enjoyed listening to your story.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for offering this time to me and allowing me to be a part of your show. And you know, if there's one thing I said that helped one person today, then I did my job. So thank you. I'm truly grateful for this opportunity.
Well, I'm truly grateful that we got together on this. So I'm going to close real quick and call the show to an end. This is Jeff Bacon of the DIY Writer Podcast saying thank you, Deborah. And I hope you all have a great day and keep your chin up. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.